Alright, what's up, Street Talks there, Kim? Alright, so this is the thought. The thought is about combination of motivation, practicing what you preach, and preaching and stuff like that. They're watching us. Alright, so this is the gist. So it's also about a little bit about sharing your perspectives and so forth. So first and foremost, why share your perspective? Why preach? Why practice? Why do anything? Why move? Whatever. So the question is, why move? This is kind of an interesting one. The basic thing is we need to move in order to eat, right? Is that if we never moved and we never ate food, we would certainly die. Ooh. Some Amazon Prime deliveries. Right, so the question is, why move? Because we need to move in order to eat. Now, modern life is kind of funny. Hello. Modern life is kind of funny because in theory, you could be like a nerd stuck on your computer chair and be like the people from WALL-E. In modern times, you actually technically don't really need to move in order to survive. Like, let's do a thought experiment. Let's say you just sat in a chair, or you're lying down, you had a VR headset on. You could sip food through a straw, or just, move and eat this way. Then you would actually never need to move, which is kind of an interesting thought. So like, in theory, in order to survive, you could actually, in theory, just be plugged into Oculus Rift, kind of a combination of the Matrix and WALL-E and stuff like that, and you wouldn't die. You could eat your food, you could drink water, you could have coffee, caffeine, whatever it may be, you wouldn't die. Now, physiologically, you would feel like shit, because certainly this is not a good life or a virtuous life, because you're just not gonna feel super good. But it's still possible in order to live in this kind of strange way. So it seems, first and foremost, us humans were designed to move in order to procure food. And also, not only that, but there seems to be something in our human DNA that we delight in new visions, new sights, new smells, new experiences, and so forth. And my theory is because, something in our human DNA, kind of like what Nietzsche calls the will to power. We have the will to overpower, the will to become more, to augment ourselves, to become more powerful, to gain more resources, gain more influence, impact, power, whatever it may be. So for example, if we didn't have this will, we'd all still probably be in, caves just eating acorns. Now, I personally prefer eating steak, so I'm glad that I have this personal will to power. Oh, what a beautiful day. Right, so certainly we humans were happiness is just kind of this feeling that we're kind of becoming stronger, or getting more resources, or we're becoming more. And how does one feel happier? So my thought is, we feel happy when we feel like we're becoming more powerful. And power being a very abstract notion. So we feel more powerful when, you feel like you're making more money. And it's not money for the sake of money we want. It's the thought that if we have more money, we have more opportunities, we have more power over reality, we have even the potential to control other people, to control more resources and stuff like that. And not only that, but the feeling like we're becoming more, we're becoming fuller, we're becoming more. And so, it's kind of interesting because I think to myself, why is it that we all want like Lamborghinis or these crazy sports cars or, Teslas or whatever it may be? And some thoughts. First and foremost, I think there's some people who just like legitimately like it purely for the aesthetic qualities. Like, they just kind of like the way it looks. And for me, I've realized maybe this is kind of like an artistic thing, right? Is we have a certain joy of looking at things which are aerodynamic and have nice proportions. So when I look at a Lamborghini or a jet fighter pilot or a jet fighter plane, or things what I consider good design, effectively what I like is there's something about the movement and the curve which actually is very motivational. So in theory, if I owned a Lamborghini, right, it was in my driveway or whatever, even just looking at it, a nice piece of sculpture, it motivates you to move, it motivates you to do stuff. And so certainly it comes down to moving motivation, and even there's all these different phrases like, what is your motive, and stuff like that. So I think it comes down to some sort of like a combination movement, the will to power, and stuff like that. So what do we humans typically want? It seems like we humans just want more control and power over other humans. Why is that? Maybe there's something in our DNA that, when you can control another human being or tell them what to do or serve us, it feels like we've augmented our power. And also maybe like the human desire for war and conquest and fighting and stuff like that. It's a desire to exhibit your power over other people. And maybe it's also this delight in cruelty or killing or stuff like that. And also part of it might just be a biological thing. It's like, why do we prefer to eat T-bone steak than eat, dandelion flowers? Is that, steak, red meat, it's higher in nutrition and nutritional content. So even watching 2001 Space Odyssey, do you remember that scene where the apes or the predecessors to humans, first they're just eating grubs, then one of them discovers they could use a bone and use that to kill animals, then they start eating red meat and everyone's so happy. And so certainly humans have been able to evolve and build bigger, greater brains because of increased nutrition, which is like the advent of humans being able to eat meat. And in the past, this is where things get interesting. In the past, the reason why we didn't eat so much meat was because it was just very difficult to come by and it was really expensive. But if you look at the ancient Greeks too, all they eat was nothing but beef, cattle, oxen, and stuff like that. And so I feel like even us modern humans, if we want to desire to become more, we should actually adopt a more carnivorous, more meat, flesh-forward diet. And also I think in order for us humans to become more, we actually need to become a little more amoral. So not to think too much about morality and ethics, because I think that's just kind of a sucker's game, is that to think too much about morality and ethics, and this is where I think diet and nutrition is going to get so weird and interesting, is that a lot of the reason why they don't eat meat, or the reason why they adopt a more vegan or a plant-based diet, I think part of it is actually people think it's legitimately healthier, but also part of it is kind of like people think it's like an ethical duty of sorts. Like, for example, you feel that it's morally wrong to kill animals, or you think it's bad for the planet, or whatever it may be. But if we put the morality and ethics aside and just think, what is the supreme form of nutrition? for human beings, my thought is it's obviously some sort of fatty cut of meat, beef. And if I had my choice, always beef, oxen, cattle, anything with a higher saturated fat. And even my theory is saturated fat cholesterol is a steroid. And so, you know, the more fatty, saturated fat meats you eat, the more you're gonna become stronger. Because like I was even studying like just how human growth hormones and steroids work. Essentially it's kind of similar to cholesterol. Now we've been suckered into thinking that eating cholesterol causes one to, you know, get heart attacks and die, but I think we've discovered that's false. And so assuming that wasn't true, assuming that eating a highly fatty saturated meat diet or red meat didn't actually decrease your lifespan, then certainly I think it's probably the superior form of nutrition. Anyways, so taking to this idea, why share your thoughts, why share your opinion and so forth? Because, and this is just me just speaking very frankly, and what I really think is perhaps when you share your opinion, your thoughts, your ideas and stuff like that, you could actually assert yourself. You could assert your life, and you feel actually a little bit more alive in the sense that you believe that your thoughts have meaning, purpose, and so forth. And you feel alive. Because if one were to just stay at home all day for the rest of your life, never interact with other humans and never affect anything, it would cause some sort of physiological downside and depression, because you feel like you can't do nothing to affect or influence the world. So it does seem that maybe as humans, what we desire is to have more power and impact, and the ability actually to impress our will and our desires onto things. Now, if you think about kids, right? Like kids are actually kind of like the ultimate model for, I think, for us to follow before we end up moralizing them, because, you know, kids have natural drives and desires. Kids like to break things, they like to run around, they don't like to sit down, they're very hyperactive. Kids are quite cruel, you know, and also children are always trying to gain social ascendancy over other kids. They play together, they fight together, whatever, they play games with each other and stuff like that. So kids end up actually doing lots of fun things with one another. So I think when it comes to just life in general, having this sort of desire for us to interact and engage is what gives us the feeling of fullness, and it gives us the feeling of life. Now, this is also something interesting when it comes to philosophy, is like, you know, notions of practicing what you preach or preaching what you're practicing, whatever. It's interesting because that's what comes down to kind of more of this like moralistic, ethical philosophy. So if you think about philosophy, the history is before Socrates and after Socrates. So before Socrates, they call them pre-Socratic, like before Socrates. So Democritus, Anaxagoras, Heraclitus, like the super OG philosophers. And they're kind of less interested about morality and ethics. They're more interested in just like the nature of the world, physics, and natural life, human physiology, the world, and stuff like that. Whereas once Socrates came to play, all the philosophers after him, morality, virtue, ethics becomes the chief concern. It's more focused on politics, you know, human interactions, economics, and so forth. Now, one thing that's been on my mind is, this is kind of about like equality and stuff like that. So, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you know, guys should be this way, women should be this way, blah, blah. But for me, it's not even that like guys are superior to girls and girls are superior to guys. It's not like a battle of the genders. To me, it's more of like, maybe it's just the more interesting goal is, how can humanity as a collective thrive and evolve into something greater? Because certainly if we look at other forms of, animal life, like we look at chimpanzees or whatever, right? They have certain social structures. Males and females have different social roles, and certainly this ends up becoming beneficial in a certain way. And obviously from a genomics perspective, men and women have different hormones and genes and stuff like that. And so then it becomes interesting, is that like, does one want to be a tool of society, or does one want to be an individual and to do as what one pleases? So for myself, I believe in individualism. And individualism means that you as an individual, you being a free person, a free man, a free woman, whatever you want to call yourself, you can do whatever you want. And this becomes a little bit amoralistic, because you don't got to depend on nobody else, and you don't need other people to depend upon you. And this is actually where I do believe that, like, regardless of what age, gender, sex, whatever you is, just you could do wherever the hell you want, right? So, and I don't think you should allow yourself to get bullied for you as a guy or a girl or whatever you are, to act a certain way, to not act a certain way, to think a certain way, to not think a certain way. And certainly the goal is for you to become more free-spirited and for you to do whatever you want. Because like, even for me, I was born a guy, so I can only know from a guy's perspective. But if I was a woman, certainly I wouldn't want people to boss me around and tell me what not to do. So it's just like, so the very basic thing is, in terms of sharing your perspective or your philosophies and stuff like that, is essentially just like, imagine other people in your shoes or yourself in other people's shoes. Is that like, if you don't like don't do unto others as you don't want others to do unto you. So like, if you don't like other people telling you what to do, don't let other people do that to you. And similarly, you shouldn't be superimposing your values and beliefs upon others. And I think there should be mutual tolerance in society. Seems like a good thing. So in some ways, I think this is where libertarianism is quite a good philosophy or a governmental mode of living or doing anything, because it just kind of presupposes that, there's no morality and ethics, and you should just like let other people do as they want to do. And also to do it in such a way that, like, obviously you don't want people committing violence against each other. So some sort of like moral or economical structure or political structure which prevents humans from attacking and killing each other from a physical harm perspective. But in terms of sharing people's perspectives and stuff like that, maybe people should just be able to express wherever they want, but obviously within bounds, because there needs to be some sort of laws and privileges. Like, I don't think society should allow for looting and stuff like that. I believe in private property. I don't believe in communism. So yeah, I think it should be kind of a nice philosophy in which everyone allows themselves to, to do you, essentially. And so I think the nice thing about sharing your opinion, your thoughts with other people is that it does make you feel more powerful the more you share your opinion with others. And also, not only that, but the more you share your opinion with others, the more alive you feel. And certainly to feel alive is the best. No one wants to feel dead. And so in life, as an artist, as an individual, as a creator, for you to assert yourself, share your opinion, to put yourself out there is probably one of the best and happiest ways to live. And I think on a base level, all humans want to be happy, but maybe happiness is just the acknowledgement or the feeling, the notion, or the acknowledgement that you actually are getting more powerful, that you're gaining more influence, that you're impacting and affecting other people. And so, yeah, continue to philosophize, continue to think, continue to share your thoughts and your opinions. I think we're currently living in a brave new world and a brave new time. And we're currently living in the best time in society where you could share all of your personal perspectives with other people. You got the power of the internet, more or less for free. You could, assert your opinion and share it with others. Obviously, the simplest thing to start your own blog, make your own website, bluehost.com. If you want something more basic, you can make your own YouTube channel like I do. Whoa, so beautiful day. So allow yourself to be happy and glad and thrive on, baby.